I don't know, I find myself doing it as well, that you feel like you need to use fancy words and big things like that. And I mean, exactly what you were just saying there. I've looked at quite a few sites recently. You look at and you read through all these really good sounding things. Yeah, don't know what it does. I'm sure it's really good, but I just don't know what it's supposed to do. And yeah, I'm sure we're the worst people for it a lot of the time.
I'm sure we are. Welcome to the Exposure Ninja Digital Marketing Podcast. My name's Tim Cameron Kitchen. I'm head ninja at Exposure Ninja, a digital marketing agency that helps our clients get more sales through their website. And that's exactly what this show is all about. Now, in this episode today, we're going to be talking about a topic which has been particularly on our minds here at Exposure Ninja over the last few months, as we've noticed that more and more of our clients are falling down this certain hole. And it not necessarily just the small businesses that are falling down this hole, actually larger businesses are falling down this hole as well. And the hole is positioning or targeting, whatever the word is, basically identifying exactly what it is that you sell and exactly who you sell to. Now, this is a challenging topic because it's not always obvious if you've got this wrong. But it is obvious when you've got it right. You feel a certain resonance with your target audience and growth tends to be easier. And we certainly feel when a business has very clear positioning inside Exposure Ninja because ads tend to work better, the content's easier to target, we can ask the client questions and they can give us very concise answers. Whereas when things are a little bit wrong, they have hazy positioning, they're uncertain exactly where they should be targeting. Things are more difficult, basically. So in this episode, I'm talking to Geoff Kennedy about this particular topic. Now, Geoff is an experienced marketer with a variety of different roles behind him, as we'll talk about in the episode. And what we try and do is drill down into this topic. So I hope it's useful and I hope it helps guide you to clear positioning and some very clear audience targeting. Without further ado, let's go. Geoff, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So you're an experienced SEO, but also a very experienced digital marketer, Sainsbury's Bank, various consultancies and agencies, Visit Scotland, and now head of marketing at Sitebulb. Amazing SEO tool, by the way. Anything I missed from that short CV?
Quite a few things in between there. Yeah, a bit of all sorts. I mean, my main thing that quite a few people don't know about at the moment is I split my time between being head of marketing at Sitebulb and farming. So that's quite a mix I have, my family's place. But beyond that, I've done kind of a bit of all sorts. So, I mean, obviously I'm doing marketing now, but like you said, my background is in SEO, but various different guises with that, a bit more on the management, the people side of it, managing clients, but earlier days it was a lot more technical. So yeah, I like to hope I'm a bit more rounded, if not a specialist.
Perfect. Yeah, well, that's what we like here. I think getting too technical with SEO in podcast form isn't always what people are after.
Yeah.
So, okay, I totally didn't know that about the farming. I don't really know where to start with that. But if we look at what your role in Sitebulb at the moment, like what's a typical day like? What are your main kind of responsibilities with Sitebulb?
I mean, we're a very small business. That's one of the main things, like a lot of others. So only recently we've split our roles up a bit more. So the Sitebulb is at the moment essentially myself and Patrick and Gareth, the two founders. So I started about 18 months ago on the team. And since then, we've been kind of finding our feet to where each of us sit. Because before I started, it was very much Gareth did all of the development and Patrick did everything else. And since I started, I've been obviously looking at the marketing side, but Patrick was still doing quite a bit of that. And more recently, we've split it more to he's looked after customer success, to put a wanky title on it. And I've focused solely on the marketing side of things. What that means in reality is still a bit all over the place. I mentioned to you in my email about the positioning, so that was a big piece of work I did early on. And off the back of that, we spent a year pretty much testing tactics and bits and pieces of strategy, and now day to day is more getting content out. We have a few sort of advertising channels, more sponsorship type things. Use a few external writers, so keeping that sort of thing moving. Bit of social media, a few ads at times, like sort of AdWords, social media things. So a bit all over the place, to be honest. If you ask me at the end of the day what I've actually done, I sometimes don't have a clue. But at the minute, we're still very much in figuring out what works for Sitebulb and how we grow it. So a lot of what I'm doing is putting processes together for what I'm doing so that we can grow that if we get more team members in or we're outsourcing particular parts.
Awesome. Sounds, very much like the fun and fluid stages of early business, really, isn't it? The 3-person thing. Everyone's spinning a whole bunch of plates. Today, we wanted to talk about a really kind of crucial component of marketing that's often overlooked in favor of, particular channels or tactics. And that's choosing your market and proposition, which obviously, it sounds like that's something that you've really worked on at Sitebulb. But from my observations with our clients, which are, even up to kind of mid-sized clients, maybe 10, 15 million in revenue, this isn't always as clear as people think, and you can often trip someone up by saying, if you met your perfect customer, explain what you do, and it all kind of starts to unfold there. So obviously, with your extensive background, we can draw on different stories and things like that, but I know you've got a story from very early on in your career where this kind of really hit home on how important it was to choose your market and to be very clear about what your position was.
Yeah, so I mean, I again mentioned this when we originally talked about this catering equipment company I'd worked at. That was my first role my first job in digital so I was a bit self-taught before then, but just to jump to the now, I've only really recognised what I was doing as positioning or anything like that at the time. I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I was brought in on a sort of part-funded scheme. The owner had got someone to knock up a website and realised, well, we can make some money online here. They were very much a traditional business, but he thought, well, we can sell a few things. So it was setting up the e-commerce side of the business there, selling catering equipment to like restaurants, takeaways, that sort of thing. But one of the really big things I found was they were selling the likes of KitchenAid mixers and Dualit toasters and these sort of things, which were all very much catering focused products. They were commercial. But it was around that time that all of the celebrity chefs were starting to get big and they had them in these kitchens. So we saw more selling to basically home addresses and things, and sort of realised that, well, although they were focused very much on the commercial audience, there was often more scope for a lot of the products in a domestic audience. And it was kind of realising how different to approach them, because it started off, well, we'll just sell them when they come to us rather than actually targeting them. But they wanted very different things. And I mean, some of it was practical stuff, like we only showed prices without VAT on the website and things like that, and commercial warranties and that sort of thing. So it was quite obvious, well, we need to have the other side to it. And I mean, it was a bit sort of Jekyll and Hyde because we were doing the commercial side and domestic, and we needed to get that balance, which was quite difficult. But even beyond that, it was just understanding who these little niches of audience were as well and what they wanted. And the biggest thing for me there, with my biggest learning, was because I was end to end. I mean, if I was I was sort of doing Google Ads and SEO was my main job. But if sales started coming through, I had to answer the phone and do the sales. So I was getting them questions about, well, how big's this teapot and things like that.
Yeah.
And when stuff was getting sold, I would go through the warehouse and help the lads out sending things out, and you would see the warranty stuff come back or the breakages and things. So joining all that sort of thing up was massive. But the positioning was a really big thing, because it started looking into the different audiences and seeing, well, we had quite a big niche in like village halls and churches and things like that, because we did a lot of crockery and these catering teapots, and started figuring out what they were actually interested in was how many cups could they get from a teapot, and would they stack, how high could they stack them to get them in their cupboard. So all them little bits of things within the products that had not really been thought about. So we would get new mugs in and spend that time with a measuring jug, seeing how many milliliters of tea would fit in them and daft things like that. But it gave us a bit of an edge.
Yeah.
And we were able to, we had a few different audiences. We didn't just decide to focus on one, but it meant we could really drill down on what they were looking for. Whereas a lot of the competitors were just generic information. They were copy pasting the information from the suppliers. And it was a practical thing for us as well, because we didn't want to be stuck on the phones answering questions about all the products.
So, this is fascinating, and it's fascinating that it didn't kind of occur to you that, you didn't go into that job saying, right, we need to figure out our target audience and we need to work on our positioning. This just kind of evolved because you had your eyes and ears open and you were involved with different parts of the customer journey, right? And I think it feels like, there's a lot of businesses that get very fast traction. And, I'm thinking of, we've done a deep dive of companies like Gymshark, where they just get extremely rapid traction. And it feels to me like one of the commonalities is they've got this piece right from the start. And like you say, it's not because, they've sat down with a spreadsheet and they've tried to work out their segment. They've just nailed it. The opportunity for businesses that haven't figured out this stuff yet is to get it right and get something that actually resonates, because then it becomes a little bit more easy. It becomes a bit more natural. Like you say, you can answer the questions that people are actually asking rather than just copying and pasting. Is that your sense? And also, what was the impact, would you say, of getting this stuff right for the catering business, like sales-wise or otherwise?
I would definitely agree with that. And I was watching your video the other day about positioning as well. And one of the things that you said, I think, is really important, that it's not just a one-off thing. And there's a lot of businesses evolve, and what they were isn't necessarily what they are. And I don't know about the examples you mentioned there, but I've seen a lot that they've gone through a period of change to then really focus on a particular audience, and that's what's resonated with people, and that's what's driven them. And you'll sometimes see before that they were quite a wide business, and then they've just found that niche. Sorry, I would try to remember what the second part of the question was now.
Well, I think before you go do that, I think that's a really good point. And that might also explain why some slightly larger businesses find that they've lost their identity somewhat as they've grown, because they did this in the early days. That got them to a certain place, and they start getting inquiries from all sorts, start catering to everyone. And before they know it, a new marketing manager comes in and says, so what's going on here then? And the answer is, well, we just kind of do a bit of everything for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. That's something that we had a bit of experience with at Sitebulb, because when I first, when I was first speaking to Patrick and Gareth, one of the big things I sort of raised when I was speaking to them early on was that how they were talking about the tool didn't really match up to what I thought the benefit was.
Right.
And they completely agreed, but they'd outgrown what their positioning was before. So they'd set Sitebulb up as a crawler. And whereas, a lot of the other crawlers out there, they crawl, they spit out data, you get your data out the other end, whereas what Sitebulb was doing was putting an interface on it. And I mean, you can manipulate your data, you can get graphs out, all that sort of thing that isn't really a crawler. So what it was being sold as didn't do justice to what it actually was in reality. So that was really interesting. And I mean, that was what got me into positioning stuff, because like I was saying, I didn't have a clue what any of this was before. One of the things I've liked about your other videos is you always steer away from acronyms and things. And since I've started working at Sitebulb, that's when I've kind of gone into the SaaS world, and so many acronyms. And I don't have a clue what half of them are, but positioning was never a thing for me.
Yeah.
It was only when I sort of realized, well, we need to do something there. And I read, was it April Dunford's book, Obviously Awesome. And I really liked that because it put it in more of a practical context. And a lot of the other things I'd seen had been very much theoretical, and unless you're in a big corporate, what do you actually do with positioning?
Yeah.
So I followed a lot of her framework and put together some positioning stuff along with Patrick. And there was one, how we're positioning the tool, but also what the audience is. So there's all them bits tied up in that. And the more we looked at it, the more it started making sense. Because I think we were very guilty as well early on of just saying we're a tool for SEOs, which kind of caught. I mean, that seems like quite a niche, but in reality, the more we started thinking about what the tool was, one, we decided it's for doing audits. It's not just for doing SEO. You can just do checks and all that sort of thing, but really where the value is for doing audits. And sort of the next step from that was it's not just necessarily for anyone doing SEO, because if you've got your own website, you're not bothered about doing reports for clients or anything like that. So where the real value comes is if you've got to deliver that to a client. So that we just started drilling that down more and more. So it ended up, I don't know. So this is really bad because I can't remember it because I'm not being out speaking to people. But it's an SEO auditing tool for SEO professionals, which we define as agency and freelance. And I have got much more concise messaging somewhere, but that was essentially what it drilled down to, which it does rule out quite a lot. And it was the ruling out of other stuff that almost made things easier than the inclusion bit. Yeah. Because you're not trying to please everyone.
That's a good point. So going back to the original second question, in the catering equipment company, you mentioned about transitioning from commercial, which feels like, let's just sell to a chain of restaurants. That feels like bigger orders, feels like a much more established market. So you'd expect the revenue would be much higher there, to what might feel like a kind of niche with these village halls and people who wanted the same toaster as they saw with the celebrity chef. What was the financial or other impact on the business of choosing this and saying, right, we're going in this direction?
It was a really big shift. And the money side of it was actually quite a big thing as well, because you would think that it was more a niche audience and there maybe isn't quite the numbers there. But what we found was because they were used to selling commercially, they were squeezed on prices. Right. So they were like having to do discounts and compete with all these other catering equipment companies. Whereas when we went to domestic audience, all of a sudden we're competing with John Lewis that are charging another £100 on a mixer and things like that. So we were able to leverage the commercial side of the business in that we could buy in bulk and that side of it and get the discount, but we could compete with the consumer sellers who were charging more. So that was a big thing. But also, there was a trend going on at the time in that it was getting a lot bigger. Like I mentioned before about the celebrity chefs, and that audience was just growing all the time there. And to be honest, we fell upon it a little bit. It turned out to be much bigger than we realised. Part of it wasn't even a conscious shift until it really started rolling, and then we did that there. And really, there's a lot more people with kitchens at home than there is commercial kitchens. So there's a hell of a lot of demand. And as well, the psychology of it was that people want to be seen as having professional chef equipment. So we really focused on get the same stuff as the professionals are using, which ironically, quite a lot of the time was a lot cheaper for us to get than the domestic equipment. So, because I mean, in a commercial kitchen, a lot of this stuff was almost throwaway. They were used to going through things quite quickly, whereas at a home kitchen, well, they're expecting it to last for a few years, so they're willing to pay a bit more. So it was, there was a lot of different stuff going on there as well. And I mean, from an advertising perspective as well, it was a lot cheaper going after the domestic audience rather than B2B customers. Just, it was a bit less competitive at the time.
Hey, it's Tim here, on my own this time. If you've enjoyed this so far, then please consider subscribing to the show if you're watching this on YouTube or listening on a podcast platform where you can subscribe, or follow if you're listening on Spotify. Don't forget also, if you need some help with your digital marketing, then we here at Exposure Ninja are happy to help you at no cost. That sounds mental. It almost is. Basically, what we do is offer a free website and digital marketing review. You may have had a free website review before from an agency that has used our strategy. But these reviews are amazing. So if you go to exposureninja.com, you'll see a big button to request your free website and marketing review. We'll ask you a few questions about your business, your digital marketing goals, and your competitors, and we will then put together a 15-minute video showing you the things that you should be focusing on over the next 6 to 12 months to significantly increase the volume of sales that your website generates for you. The service is completely free of charge. Yep. That's right. Now, obviously, if you like the recommendations and want to work with us, then we can have that conversation, but there is absolutely no obligation to do so. So head over to exposureninja.com to request your free website and marketing review today. So if it's possible to kind of generalize this experience and look at your other background and stuff. So let's say we've got a listener who's got a bit of a nagging doubt that their business, where their marketing manager or business owner has kind of evolved into a much of a muchness type, where they're maybe targeting the wrong audience or they haven't picked an audience. I guess first thing, how does someone identify that they have an opportunity here? How does someone know that the situation they're in is suboptimal? What are the red flags that you're looking for which say, right, we haven't quite nailed this?
I think getting other people involved is a good one. I mean, I was lucky at the time when I was starting to work with Sitebulb in that I was fresh eyes. I'd tested it in beta and stuff, but I hadn't looked at it in ages, which I had to gloss over for trying to get a job with them. But I mean, it was a good position to be in because I was coming in not knowing what it was. And I think once you've been in a business, it's quite difficult. So getting external people in and just getting your stuff in front of them and saying, what is this? Is this for you? Because you do get too caught up in your bubble. So that's part of it. And then the existing customers, I think, is a really good resource as well. And figuring out who your product or service is the most value to. So, I mean, we did this a bit with Sitebulb and went out to loads of our customers and found out, well, what do you think of the tool and which bits do you think are most valuable and all that sort of thing. And you start realizing what the category of people find it of most value. So if you've got lots of people that are like, yeah, it's an okay tool, you're not really nailing it. Whereas if you've got if everyone loves it, great, you're probably doing it quite well. But chances are there's probably a certain group of people that it's amazing for, and other people are okay. They're the ones that are probably either not going to come back to buy what you've sold them again, or they may or may not cancel in a month's time. Whereas there'll be your core audience is the one you want more of. Yeah. So you figure out what they look like and expand that.
So it sounds like one of the commonalities between your breakthroughs with the catering equipment business and Sitebulb is listening. And this isn't like a strategic exercise with, the management team in a room. This is going out to your customers, observing who's buying, looking at the addresses, getting a feel for what's out there. So this is probably quite a, it's quite a qualitative piece of work, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it very much qualitative. And I think as well that you've got to sometimes just make judgment calls in there. I think the scariest bit for a lot of people is that it feels like you're ruling people out. That by drilling down to a core audience, you're saying, well, these people aren't my customers, so they can't have my product, or we're not. Whereas reality is you're just focusing who you're going after. And that was something that it was almost a hard discussion with Patrick and Gareth sometimes, because you're saying, well, we're not going after them, like the developers or the person that are doing SEO for their own website and things. And it's just going through going through your product almost and think, well, who was this of value to? Not who could it be useful to? Because I think there's a danger of whatever it is. I mean, the likes of bread that you just mentioned there, that, I mean, everyone could eat it, but there's probably a much tighter audience that really want it. And they're the ones you want to go after rather than trying to get everyone. And I mean, with most audiences that we're going after, I mean, this is a big assumption, but we don't need to be selling it to everyone. If we can capture a niche of it and get all of them on board, that's a big thing. I think that is the quantitative side to it that is quite important, and we struggled with a bit as well, that knowing how big that audience is. So for the example of us, like, it would have been really handy if we could have got hold of data saying, well, there's X number of SEOs and this proportion of them are in agencies and this proportion are freelancers and stuff. I mean, we had some guidance things, but that was a big concern for us. Is the niche that we're choosing big enough to support what we're doing? And I think that's one of the biggest worries for a lot of people.
So, I mean, that leads really nicely. It's like you've got my notes in front of you, but that leads really nicely onto the next question, which is when you have a suspicion or when you have an inkling that there's a particular customer that you want to go after, how do you validate that, and what do you put in place? Like, what you don't do, right, is just take down the website and put something else up, which is just purely targeted at them. So how do you start to test that assumption? And when you do go full in, what are you looking for to say, right, this is the right approach to take?
I mean, for us, we just spent a lot of time, it was two of us going through and mapped out, like, took who we thought was a core audience and just mapping out what they looked like, which was a much more messy thing than it gets made out when you're talking about frameworks and things, but just who are they, what do they do, that sort of thing, and took what we thought was our proposition and just trying to be really critical ourselves of, well, is this of any use to them? And keeping going through and trying to put yourself in their shoes. And that took us so much of the way, because there was a bit of realization with a lot of things that stuff we had in our proposition early on was just, well, why should they be bothered about this? Why is it important to them? I mean, even things like we looked at price, and you think, well, for an SEO within an agency, is it them paying for it or is it the accounts department? Because there's a lot of, especially SaaS tools and things like that, it's not the individual that's that bothered about the price, to a certain degree anyway. So there's certain things that we had in our minds that were very much drivers that we thought, well, actually, it's not that big a thing. We should be focusing on other areas. So once we got to a point where we thought we were happy, we then started speaking to other people. And I think initially we spoke to existing users, people we knew, that sort of thing, and saying, well, does this match how you value the tool? So we knew they were people that were getting a lot of value from it. They were the ones that really loved it. So did this match up to how they saw it? And there was a few things that they turned around and said, well, actually, it's this other thing that I really like about it, or this bit, it isn't of any interest to us. So that helped us evolve a little bit more. And then I suppose the stage that we're in now still is testing it to the wider audience and seeing, does it actually work? I suspect if we were a bigger business and had a bigger team and more numbers, like whether that be customers or incoming leads to deal with, we could have done a much more quantitative approach, whereas we've kind of done a bit more qualitative and finger in the air.
You know what, I have a sneaking suspicion that there's always going to be an element of that, and that the components you've just run through are pretty much what there is to run through. So you mentioned there about thinking through what are, you're putting yourself in the customer's shoes, right? And it feels like a lot of the quantitative data that people collect around this stuff is just enabling them to understand and being able to model the customer. So as long as you can put yourself in the customer's shoes, then you're actually in a pretty good position to make some of these decisions. And it seems like quite a lot of the time the data that people collect is basically just around that, and you can replicate that by spending time on the phone or in person or on video calls with your perfect customer until you get to the stage where you're able to kind of make decisions and think as them, which is such a powerful position for a marketer to be in, isn't it? Because then you can bounce ideas off this kind of avatar in your head rather than just making arbitrary decisions and just plucking stuff out of the air.
Yeah. I think just getting someone as well, like that would be within your target audience, just to ask you questions and like about the product. Because I mean, this is something that I've been looking at for bricks and mortar business and that recently. One of my sort of bugbears that small businesses, especially, you see a lot, likes of, I don't know, Baker, for example, again, that there's an assumption that you know what they sell or what they do and things. And I spoke to a few recently that we're a baker, we bake stuff. Well, do you do cakes? Do you do birthday cakes? Do you do special, can I pre-order? What are your opening hours and things? And I was going to say arrogant. It's not an arrogance. It's just an assumption that people would already know things. Yeah. And it's often the most basic parts. I mean, so many sort of bricks and mortar businesses I've seen that don't keep their opening hours up to date. And it's sometimes them fundamentals that can make or break. And it's the same with SaaS tools or whatever it is online. I mean, the amount of businesses still see that don't have clear details about their delivery stuff. And well, you might do all your product stuff amazing, people might want to get, but if they can't figure out when it's going to turn up or how it's going to turn up or anything, then you could just be blocking yourself at the final hurdle there, or the first hurdle, whichever way.
Well, exactly. And I think there'll be listeners thinking, yeah, well, we're a bigger company, like we're successful, so we've got this stuff figured out. And I would there are going to be a lot of people in larger companies who are listening. We've got a client now, I'm not going to say who they are, but they run a very successful, financially successful business, doing something very complex for developers of really, really large enterprise corporate clients. And you go on their website, you cannot figure out what it is that they do or for who. And it's so obvious to them because, like you say, they're the baker. They spend all their time baking. And then they get these leads from referrals, which is great, but except when you don't get leads from referrals anymore and you need to go out to the cold audience and get leads, you need to be more than just, well, I'm just here making these loaves of bread. You actually need to go out to people and say, if you want the best bread you've ever tasted, come here and this is what you need to do and this is who we bake it for. Like that positioning, that kind of marketing mindset needs to exist. And I think so often it doesn't. And we can make a mistake of thinking that this is just a, one-man band type problem.
Yeah. I think in sort of the tech space and marketing especially, where the worst culprits, there's always this, I don't know, I find myself doing it as well, that you feel like you need to use fancy words and big things up that. And I mean, exactly what you were just saying there. I've looked at quite a few sites recently. You look at and you read through all these really good sounding things. I don't know what it does. I'm sure it's really good, but I just don't know what it's supposed to do. And I'm sure we're the worst people for it a lot of the time.
I'm sure we are. I think it probably gets worse the more you've kind of internalized it, doesn't it? So, the biggest agencies in the world, if you go on their website, good luck trying to figure out what they do or who they do it for. It's all stories and video show reels, and is it a video company? Is it marketing? No idea. It's so broad, so general. It's just useless to everyone. Hey, it's Tim here, on my own this time. If you've enjoyed this so far, then please consider subscribing to the show if you're watching this on YouTube or listening on a podcast platform where you can subscribe, or follow if you're listening on Spotify. Don't forget also, if you need some help with your digital marketing, then we here at Exposure Ninja are happy to help you at no cost. That sounds mental. It almost is. Basically, what we do is offer a free website and digital marketing review. You may have had a free website review before from an agency that has used our strategy. But these reviews are amazing. So if you go to exposureninja.com, you'll see a big button to request your free website and marketing review. We'll ask you a few questions about your business, your digital marketing goals, and your competitors, and we will then put together a 15-minute video showing you the things that you should be focusing on over the next 6 to 12 months to significantly increase the volume of sales that your website generates for you. The service is completely free of charge. Yep. That's right. Now, obviously, if you like the recommendations and want to work with us, then we can have that conversation, but there is absolutely no obligation to do so. So head over to exposureninja.com to request your free website and marketing review today. All right, let's see if we can turn this into a kind of action step sequence for the audience. And this might be a little bit ambitious, but I'm feeling ambitious. I'm full of some very decent bread right now. So someone's listening, they're thinking, right, this sounds like it could be me. This sounds like something I might need to do. Step 1, diagnosis. How do we know if this is an issue for us?
I would say one of the most powerful things is just get a stranger to look at your site or whatever your materials are and get them to repeat back to you, what is it I do?
Yeah, freaking killer. Yeah. Okay. So we've got an answer there which doesn't make us happy. They struggle for a bit, or they told us something that's completely wrong. What's the next thing that we do in this journey?
I don't know if it's quite a linear process, but I suppose in there somewhere we need to figure out who the audience needs to be. We can't optimize for that audience until we've figured out who we want to go after. So it maybe sort of runs in parallel to that you look at your product or service or whatever it is and just think, well, what are the valuable bits to it? Or speak to your VIP customers or the people that are shouting about you and ask them what's the thing that gives you the most value out of it? What do you like about it most?
Yeah.
And figure out if that sits with who you're going after. And if not, that's when you need to figure out a better realization of your audience.
So we've got ask a stranger, get some weird feedback. We've got get calibrated with your customers, kind of understand where they're at and start to draw out some of the, I guess, bouncing their language back to them, draw out some of the stuff that's most meaningful for them. Step 3, it sounds like using that calibration and kind of coming up with a theory of what positioning looks like, would you say?
I think so, yeah. I mean, I think you've got to have something to start with to work with.
Yeah. And then you mentioned earlier kind of bouncing that back with one of your customers, and you said that you talk to some of the Sitebulb customers to kind of make sure that you're on the right track and validate that hypothesis before you go all in. Is that right?
I think so, yeah. I mean, it just seems to be you've got the two different parts. One is your product and the message and everything, and the other is the audience. It's just going back and forwards and start off doing it yourself and sort of with a persona and working out, well, are they matching up? Do we think they're matching up? And then replace the persona with a real person and start bouncing off real people. And if you can scale that up, great. If you can sort of, I don't know, do some kind of research or run ads, do a bit of split testing, and test what you put together.
Yeah, we'll sometimes test ad copy using different benefits or different kind of positioning statements, and if you're confident that your audience is right, then you can measure for click-through rate and conversions to see what's kind of resonating the most, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Geoff, we just built the perfect positioning 4-step sequence. We should put some fancy acronym on that.
We should, yeah, but I'll never remember.
Geoff, this has been awesome. Where can people find out more about you? And of course, check out Sitebulb.
Best place to find myself is probably Twitter. I waste a bit of time on there. So Geoff Kennedy on there. Pretty simple. Nice. And if you'd like to try Sitebulb out, you get a free trial on the website or drop me a message and I'll sort you out.
Perfect. Geoff, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me.
If you've enjoyed this, then for more details about all of our podcasts, you can head over to exposureninja.com/podcast. And please do leave us a review or a comment on whatever platform you're watching or listening to this on. Of course, I'm assuming that you've already subscribed, right? If you haven't, you know what to do. And finally, don't forget that if you want some free help with your digital marketing, then you can request a free website and marketing review from us here at Exposure Ninja. Just go to exposureninja.com and click the big button to request your free website and marketing review. The team will create a 15-minute video showing you the lowest hanging fruit and the opportunities for growth over the next 6 to 12 months. They'll have a look at your website, your conversion optimization. They'll even give you some feedback on your positioning, because it's always useful to have a third party's opinion. And of course, we'll show you what you need to work on over the next half to 1 year in order to generate significantly more sales through your site. So head over to exposureninja.com to request your free website and marketing review today, and I'll see you in the next episode.